that is that correct? If there is a student out there, could you just type a response in your dialog box? Oh, Jay, wow, amazing. Jay, welcome. That's amazing. I was just getting to be so disappointed if I was the only one here, but we've got you there, Jay, and you are welcome. Thank you so much for pitching and for being out there, and I hope you're going to find it useful and that you will perhaps even here and there find it fun. It looks like you are a person with a sense of humor, which is a double good thing, that you're there and you have a sense of humor. And here we are on a Thursday night. Alesti is also joined. Evening, Alesti, and welcome. You are welcome to type at any time. If you have questions, comments, or anything in this dialog box, I don't know where it sits on your screen, but Jay has discovered it. Alesti has also obviously discovered it because she said hello, and welcome to both of you then. So we are having this session to talk a bit about business communication, or as it is known in the terms of the IMM Graduate School BC101, Business Communication for First Year Students. Could you just type a comment to tell me, are you now registered, Jay and Alesti, for the first time, or did you register last year? Or sorry about that. Ignore that. Wipe that out. Not last year, the previous semester. Were you registered in the previous semester, the first semester of, okay. So Jay, you're not a complete newbie on this block. You've been here, you've done the first semester, and this is your second semester. Alesti, are you the same sort of situation? Okay, this is your first semester, right? I think then both of you are what we would call fairly new first year students, and we have this business communication session, of course, to support your studies in the semester, but also because business communication is a fairly important subject. In fact, business communication is a fairly important activity in the business world out there. It's not uncommon to see in advertisements for the marketing industry, job adverts, in other words, the stipulation that the incumbent or the applicant must be a good communicator. And that is why we have this module, the business communication module, to help you to become a better communicator in the business environment. I spent today talking to having an interview or a chat with somebody in the marketing environment, and I caught myself often during this discussion caught myself commenting to myself, wow, what a brilliant communicator. No wonder that this person has reached such magnificent objectives and has done so well. Communicating is important. It is especially important in the marketing environment, in the marketing industry. Why? Because essentially what a marketer does is to tell the potential customers out there about the product. I know that's a very, very simplified version of what marketing is about. That's just my take on it. But essentially, it all boils down to that simple activity of communicating your perceived advantages in the product or the service that you are marketing to the potential customers out there. So there's sense in being a good communicator. There's sense in making the effort to improve your communication skills. And this module could never be the complete and final chapter in this process of you becoming a better communicator. As long as it serves as a launching pad for your communication skills and for your career in marketing. Hopefully, doing this module will help you appreciate and understand how important this function really is, and it will inspire you to improve your skills as you go. What are the core components of this module? First of all, there is the learner guide. Jay, you would be well aware of the fact that learner guides are the trade essentials of studying at the IMM. Every module that you are going to do will have a learner guide. What is the role of the learner guide? It guides you in terms of the core components in the module. It guides you in terms of the thinking that you should be familiar with when you do the module. So in some ways it's a summary of the textbook, but it's also more than that, just to give it its full credit. It also tells you a bit more about the module than what you will find in the textbook. Celeste, I'm glad to see that you think that the learner guide is pretty useful. I hope that you will gain a lot from working through it. Then there's the textbook. In this case, we are going to ask you to get hold of Communicating at Work, a textbook by Terry Grant and Ria Borschitz. So that will be your textbook for the semester. The amazing thing about this little textbook is, however, that it covers such a wide spectrum of content in this module that it will not only be useful for you to have somewhere in your library of books at home or in the office, but it will continue to serve a purpose even after you've completed your studies. It's a quick guide to essentials in terms of business communication, and it's very useful to refer to every now and then if you come up against problems or challenges in your job. Then there's the student pacer for the module. The student pacer you'll find on the module website, on eLearn. Leslie, I'm not sure if you are completely familiar with eLearn yet, but every module has a web page or a web platform on eLearn, and if you go into business communication on that platform in eLearn, you will find all sorts of additional things sitting there. One of these would be the student pacer. What is the oops, I just realized that I referred you to the wrong textbook. It's not Communicating at Work. I'm sorry. It's Cleary's book, Sandra Cleary's book. Please excuse me for that. That's a bad boo-boo, but it's a book by Sandra Cleary, which you need to get, for this module. So it serves the textbook, and the pacer are there to support you in your studies. Perhaps what you're more focused on at this stage in the game is the submission date of the assignment. The assignment is the first big challenge for the semester, and in this case, for this module, you need to submit the assignment on the 15th of August. Now, that's only just 2 weeks away, so I would suggest that you try and get started on it after this session, perhaps tonight or possibly over the weekend. But it's important not to leave this until the last moment. Of course, that causes a lot of anxiety and stress. So get started on that assignment in good time. Tonight we're going to work through the assignment questions, and you will see that they're pretty straightforward, but they do ask for good preparation, for some thinking, for good structure in your answer, so that you could get the maximum results. So we will be working through each one of those assignment questions to make sure that at the end of this session tonight, you'll be leaving here knowing what is expected of you in terms of the assignment. The role of the textbook and the learner guide, what is the role of these two sources? Well, the one supports the other. Of course, the learner guide covers most of the content of the textbook, but it does so in a much more focused way. So in many respects, the learner guide lifts out the most important learning points from the textbook. Both the learner guide and the textbook are important. You need both, definitely. The learner guide also sits on the module platform on eLearn, so you could print it off that if you don't have a copy which you picked up from the Student Support Center. So that sits there. I always like to think of these two sources as the written induction into the language of the module. You will find, as you work your way through every semester towards the final qualification, that every module has certain key phrases, certain key words, and you have to learn to speak that language using the key words, using the key phrases. When you answer a question in exam, when you answer the assignment questions, you need to rely on these key phrases, these key words, because using them illustrates to the examiner that you are truly familiar with the content of the module. So it is fairly important that you use the learner guide and that you use Cleary's textbook and you read the stuff in it so that you will be able to illustrate familiarity with the lingo of the module. Wesley, hello and welcome. Are you asking something important? And the answer is yes. This session is being recorded and will be available on eLearn on the module website later. I don't know when this is going to be available though. It won't be like tomorrow, for example. It may only be somewhere in next week, but a short answer to your question is yes, it is available there. Or rather, it will be made available there. So we've looked so far at the textbook, explained the role of that. We've looked at the learner guide, explained the role of that. We briefly touched on the student pacer, and maybe it's a good thing that we can just reflect on the pacer and make sure that you are aware of the fact that this pacer is what it says it is. Hopefully it paces you through the semester. It tells you where you need to be at the end of every week in the semester. I know that many of you are studying on your own. You're not part of a student group. So it becomes pretty lonely, but also it becomes very hard to judge your own progress and rate of completion. Therefore, the student pacers are there to help you pace yourself, to know that, oh, if it's week 3 and I'm here in covering the work of the module, in the module, I'm more or less on track, and I should be able to complete the whole syllabus by the end of the semester in time to write the exam. So that essentially is the role of the pacer. There is also a module forum facility on this module platform on eLearn. What is this? It's simply a place for you to ask questions, a place for you to see what other students are posting, what they think of the module, where they are in the module, what the questions are which haunt or trouble them. So I'm responsible for answering the questions on this module forum facility, and I normally spend a few hours every Friday morning doing that, going into eLearn, answering student queries, questions and comments on the various module form facilities which I'm responsible for. There are a few modules for which I do this. So if you have any questions, if there's anything troubling you, you are welcome to post it on there, and 10 to 1 you'll find another student answering the question for you, but if not, I will certainly be there and responding to questions and queries. You are also welcome to use the email address which is on the screen at the moment, academic_undergraduate@immgsm.ac.za. You post any questions, queries to that, and somebody will respond, normally within 48 hours. I think 48 hours is the sort of measure of effectiveness which has been given to us as the time frame or window within which we need to respond. Pretty quick, normally, that you will get a response. In addition to all these options for helping you resolve your questions, there's also, of course, the telephone. So anytime you feel that you need to talk to somebody about the module, anytime you feel you have a question which you need an urgent answer to, just pick up the phone, ask them to put you through to me, and I'll be at the end of the line. I might not always be bright and cheerful, but I will at least be, you know, a talking, speaking, responding person there, and I will do my best to help you. Most of the time I'm able to. Now and then I get a question which is totally new, strange, and way out of what I'm used to respond to, but even those I eventually am able to get an answer on and pass it on to the student. So there are lots of options for helping you. My experience, however, is that if students leave something for too long, they tend to get their minds and their stomachs in a knot about it, and it becomes eventually so overpowering and so big a problem in their mind's eye that it becomes a burden. So start seeking help soon in the game. The moment you know that there's something that you're not sure of, simply pick up the phone and ask. I promise you, nobody is going to think less of you or laugh at you or have a bad impression of you if you ask a question, even if afterwards you think back about it and you think, oh, I really should have known that. I shouldn't have asked somebody. I can see now that it's common sense. But remember that at that point, at that time, with what you knew when you confronted the problem, it was a problem, it was a challenge. So no need to feel embarrassed about it. Ask for help. There are people here who are waiting for you to contact them and ask for help, and you are really welcome to do so. Right, I'm going to take a swallow of my bottle of Nestle mineral water. I promise you there's nothing else but water in this bottle, and give you a second or two to ask any questions, anything which may be troubling you this far, or thus far, I think is the right expression. anything that you need to have clarified right now at the moment? Jay's out there and flying. It looks like he's on board and happy, following everything. Good to working from. Okay, Risty, we'll get to that. We'll cover that in a few moments from now. Right. So let's do an overview of the content you need to cover for the exam. Not for the, for the exam as well, of course, but for the assignment specifically. Those are the units that you need to have covered or have skim read at least by the time the 15th of August comes around. First of all, there's a general introduction in Unit 1. Then in Unit 2, there's a look at team communication. Unit 3 focuses on intercultural communication. Unit 4 looks at the writing process and how to apply rules of good writing. Unit 5 looks at forms of written communication, and Unit 8 looks at language use. So from that list you can see that for the assignment you may skip for now looking at Units 6 and 7. And just look at Units 1 to 5 plus Unit 8. So those are the units you have to cover for the assignment. Here is a quick glance at the content of every unit. Oops, Jay. Let's just check. You're right. Unit 6 is also included for the assignment. When we look at the assignment, let's just make sure about that. For now, let's cover those units that I've got listed, and then we can perhaps come back to Unit 6. First of all, let's look at Unit 1. It's a general introduction. What are the most important things that you need to be aware of in terms of Unit 1? First of all, there is a model of interpersonal communication. I would say that it's pretty essential in terms of the assignment as well as the exam that you should be familiar with that model. It's most probably the only model in the module, so it's going to be a really brilliant thing if you could memorize that model and be sure to be able to reproduce it. You need to also, in addition to knowing the model, you should also be able to discuss and apply each one of the components or the elements of the model. The unit also looks at communication contexts. Of course, every bit of communication happens within a context. The context of the communication we're having with one another at the moment is a context which includes start of the semester, preparing for the assignment, having an overview of the first few units of the module. So that lends a context, and within that context we are communicating with each other. Every bit of communication, whether it's in the workplace, at home, on the bus, in a plane, at the airport, the environment lends context to the communication which is taking place. What are the barriers to communication? Without even having looked at that section yet, could I ask you if you could just type up a barrier to communication that you are able to think of right away? I'm going to type one up while I'm waiting for Helesti, Jay, and Wesley to also do so. No problem, Jay. We're looking at perhaps the question is, can you think just off the top of your head a barrier to communication? Any barrier that you can think of that you may have experienced in the past? Language, yeah. Wesley is typing up one. Let's see what is external interruptions. Yes. So what have we got here? Helesti mentioned cultural differences. I'm sure that if you are in a workplace environment already, or even if you're studying full-time and you think of perhaps school, you would be aware of situations where there was miscommunication, misunderstanding, which came about due to cultural differences. And cultural issues inform and shape our communication. The way and approach I use in communicating to you is based on my cultural perception that when somebody at an academic institution is supposed to help students, there are certain things you need to do. That's a cultural perception I have, and I'm trying to do those things. I mentioned environmental noise. You've all been in situations where you perhaps took a mobile phone call at an airport or on the road or somewhere, hopefully not while you were driving, but there could be noise and interruption happening. It could be next to a building site and so on. Wesley mentioned external interruptions as well as internal interruptions. Wesley, that's an interesting one. I'm sure all of us have been in a situation where we were feeling so socially uncomfortable or socially anxious that we couldn't think of what to say. And that's a good example of an internal interruption. That sort of thing happens. Jay, language could be a barrier to communication. Isn't it strange that language is an enabler to communication, but there are times when language could actually be a barrier? And here, Jay, of course, one is not only thinking in terms of me speaking a language and being unable to understand what a Frenchman is saying to me, but we could also speak the same language, but the words we use, the expressions we use, could become a barrier in that communication, in that interpersonal communication. The most obvious example which comes up is, for example, swearing. You may find that using swear words may upset the other person so much that they are not able anymore to listen to what you're saying. Thank you for those examples. Those are, I think, very, very good examples which you've given, and it helps a lot to illustrate the issue of barriers to communication. Leslie, I'm not sure what you mean when you say becomes a form of selection. Do you mean? Oh, I see. Okay. Yes. Yes. Are you meaning that if I don't like swearing, or I don't like hearing swear words, I could eventually get to the point where I selectively don't hear those words when somebody is talking to me and swearing a lot? Yes, yeah. Sometimes we don't have an option. We have to, we may be dependent on the communication and the information which is hidden in amongst all the words that we don't want to hear. And in a situation like that, selective listening is very useful. The unit also looks at verbal communication versus non-verbal communication. And I think that you may all have experienced or read or seen that non-verbal communication supports, adds meaning, texture, and layers to verbal communication. The fact that I'm not able to see you does, to some extent, inhibit the communication between us. I would have loved to have been able to sit in a room where Jay, Helesti, and Wesley are sitting across the table from me, so that I could see from the expressions of on their faces whether they are following what I'm saying. When they ask questions, I can see from how they use their hands, and again from their facial expressions, what they actually mean with the question, for example. So the fact that we are able to connect online helps a lot, yes, but it's communication which is a lot less textured than it would have been if we had been in the same room. Pretty obvious thing, perhaps, but still, it's a interesting thing to keep in mind in the context of communication. So, what are the key phrases in this unit? The model and the elements within the model, the communication barriers. Now, I've got to be honest with you and admit that I don't know what that third point is. Why did I put it up there? What does it mean? Oh gosh, I don't know. Preferably one with marker comments on it. What could it mean? Gee, Leslie, you laughing. I was hoping you would help me. No, so please just ignore that one. And let's look at the next one, characteristics of verbal communication versus characteristics of non-verbal communication. There are then interesting new words which I think you need to look out for. Kinesics, ethnocentrism, proxemics. Oh, can't pronounce all of those, but those are interesting new words that you could come across in this unit. Could I ask you if any of you are familiar with any of those words? Doesn't matter which one. Could you help us with just a definition of one of those? Oh, Celeste is going to tell us about kinesics. Body movements. Okay, so Celeste, we could say that kinesics means that it's the non-verbal things we do with our bodies when we are conveying a message. The body movements which go with the message. Like, for example, you would, when you say, yes, I would like to have a drink now, you would nod. And of course, that reminds us that there must be synergy always between our body movements and the message we are conveying. If somebody asks us whether we want a drink and we say yes but shake our heads, communication won't be so efficient. Have you ever tried that? Saying yes, yes, yes and shaking your head. It's pretty difficult to do. So, right, Wesley, thank you. Yeah. Ethnocentrism, thinking that the ethnic origin that you are from is superior to another. That's correct. It means that you are feeling superior to somebody of another ethnicity or cultural background. Let's see what Jay is going to define for us. Maybe personal space, proxemics. Yes, Jay, personal space. If you do human resources management as a module later on, you will see that they look at a famous author who wrote about personal space and how personal space is different for different people of different ethnic groupings. So thank you, Jay. I couldn't remember what that word means, but you've helped us there. That's great. Thank you. Right. So I think that's more or less it for Unit 1. Looking at Unit 2 and team communication. First of all, define a small group. What are its characteristics? Think of what the advantages and disadvantages are of working in groups, working in teams rather. Here's an interesting question. Let's see what you do, what you think of this one. What is, would you say, the difference between a team and a group? Let's give you a minute to see if, I know it's an unfair question, you haven't done this yet, but let's see if anybody out there can help us understand what the difference is between a team and a group. Alesti was thinking of helping, then she went away. She's back. Oh, you thought you knew, but you... Okay, anybody else? Jay, how about you? Do you know what the difference is? Just one of the differences that you would like to suggest that we can think of in terms of the difference between a team and a group. Team is normally associated with sport, and by knowing that and acknowledging that, Alesti, we're getting closer to defining a team. A team is a group of people who get together and is together in order to achieve a specific objective. a clearly defined objective which is shared by all the members of the team. And normally you would find that team members have a specific responsibility assigned to them as individuals. In other words, a team is organized and they work towards a defined objective, whereas a group is just any coincidental collection of people. You could get onto a bus to go to work and you become a member of a group of bus passengers, but you definitely not a team. So that's just a little funny aside to help you remember the difference between a team and a group. Yeah, yes. Felicity, you defining it beautifully. There's no predetermined common purpose in a group. If you look at it very definitely in terms of an academic definition, I think that's a pretty decent example of how we can define a group. Right. You will see that they look also in this unit at the stages of group formation. Now, you will find that memorizing this, the stages of group formation, is pretty useful because it also comes up in business management when you look at work teams and what the stages are. The unit also looks at the most important member roles in small groups, strategies for managing conflict in small groups, the importance of listening in the group context, and that very, very important distinction, hearing versus listening. Hearing versus listening. What is the difference between them? Could I ask you again to participate by telling me, just typing for me a response, please. If you are asked to define the difference between them, just each of you choose one of the two and define what the difference is between the two of them. Let's see how you do on this definition. Yes, hearing means you are aware of sound waves, whereas listening means you are actually Leslie is typing. Leslie is on a roll tonight. She's outshining us with this understanding. Oh, great. Well done. Listening means understanding what this person is saying. That's why we also refer to the term active listening. And what you are doing tonight is you're showing clear signs of active listening. You illustrate to me that you are listening by the responses which you type up, which show that you are taking it in, you are listening, and you are understanding what we are looking at. So that's a good example of active listening. Let's go on and look at Unit 3, Intercultural Communication. Obviously, that is important. Martha, hello, welcome. I didn't know that you were out there, otherwise I would have said hello and welcome earlier. Thanks for joining. It's nice to have you here. We look at intercultural communication in Unit 3. We cover the reasons why it is important to have knowledge about intercultural communication, because we live in a multicultural society in this country, and we come up in the workplace against situations where we have to communicate with clients or suppliers or support teams from other parts of the world, people who have different cultural perspectives, and we need to be careful in our intercultural communication so that we don't upset people. This unit also looks at cultural stereotyping. It looks at ethnocentrism again. That, I think, if I remember correctly, that term was defined for us earlier by Jay. And it looks at a very important question, which I think you need to ask yourself after you've covered this unit. What did change in terms of your perceptions and perspectives after you've done this specific unit? It would be interesting if you could think of that or spend some time on that issue as well once you've completed that unit. Right, we go on, we look at Unit 4, applying the writing process. It's interesting how our mode or modes of writing has changed through times. Could I ask you to just give me an idea of how many of you still do occasionally write by hand? Does it happen? Oh, Leslie, oh, Jay does. Oh, that's great. That's interesting. Normally, in a situation where I meet students, they say that virtually all their written communication is through typing. Well, there's an interesting theory out there when it comes to writing by hand, and it says that you are more likely to remember something that you've written by hand. In other words, if you want to remember a fact, you need to write it down by hand with a pen, piece of paper, or pencil and a piece of paper, rather than type it. It is almost as if forming the words connects with your brain better when you're writing than when you're typing. In there, of course, Celeste, is a little something to remember in terms of your study skills, that when you study, it's far better to make your summaries and your notes by writing them down by hand rather than type it up. But let's look at the writing process again in terms of the unit. You rewrite the book. Oh gosh, that's a lot of work then. Maybe you should. Yeah, Jay. Okay, you've already done that, Jay, and you found that it helped you. That's brilliant. So you are a living, breathing, participating example of the scientific fact that writing by hand helps. And you passed business management after all and are now the proud owner of all those credits. Well done. Jay, so the key is to keep writing. Okay. They say there in this unit that there's a 3-step process involved in writing. The steps are gathering information, adapting the message, and then establishing a good relationship with the audience. The last step you achieve by shaping your written message well, or by shaping your verbal communication well. Through your communication, you develop a good relationship with the audience. And once again, if we could think of this situation, that it's quite interesting that about an hour ago, we didn't even know about each other. And yet now, I almost feel like I've got 5 new friends. They're called Martha, Leslie, Jay, and is it Winsley? Wesley, sorry. Wesley, your name was high up on the thing and it slipped off the screen. The fact that we are communicating, we're building bridges. We start the process of forming a relationship, and that only becomes possible when we communicate with each other. The unit looks at a very, very important activity of how to organize, compose, and write business messages. It looks at the audience and the role which the audience plays in composing and delivering the message. The importance of purpose, how important it is for you to be clear and sure of the reasons why you are going to communicate or why you are communicating. The issue of register, and here they're not referring to a cash register. Its register relates to the tone of your voice, the way in which you speak, the way in which you write, the way in which you shape your sentences, and so on. And that all important issue of clarity in communication. That's what we are going to look at in Unit 4. Let's move on then to Unit 5. There's some more on Unit 4, applying the writing process. Conciseness is important in that unit. It's interesting. I think you can relate to the issue of conciseness with my own communication. I was told today by somebody I saw that I should try and be more concise in my written communication. I had to write something and give it to this person, and he read it and he said, well, obviously you never use 5 words when there's a chance for you to use 20. So I think it's most probably something you could have told me about my communication as well. My communication is inclined to be not very concise all the time, but be that as it may. The tone in which you adopt in the communication, the importance of paragraphs, the importance of presentation, the writing process, and completing a written and verbal communication message. how important each of those are. Just if you look at paragraphing, for example, you would be surprised to see how many students hand in assignments in which an essay had been written without any paragraphs. I know it sounds amazing, but it happens. So it's Jay, I promise you, I often have to mark these assignments where there are 2, 3, even 4 pages of just solid writing with no paragraphs in between. And of course, as you can imagine, students who write like that don't do very well, because a paragraph has a purpose. It's a collection of ideas in sentences which group itself around a core idea. Every time you have a new idea that you want to tell us about, you have to start writing a new paragraph. It's pretty simple. And it's important to leave little spaces between paragraphs, of course, when you answer an assignment question, because it makes it easier for the marker to read and understand. And what happens when the marker finds it easy to read your answer? Whoa, guess what happens to your marks? They go up. So it's not only the facts which earn you marks in an answer, it's always also the way in which you present those facts. So presentation, just something to mention there. Again, when you hand in an assignment, please make sure that you start every new answer on a new page. In other words, if you complete the answer to question 1 on this page and you only used half the page, don't start question 2 immediately below that. Start it on the next page. But work through this unit and you will see that there are lots of really nice practical suggestions there on how to hand in a well-written, well-completed piece of writing. In Unit 5, they look more at applying the writing process, looking at routine messages, how you should organize and plan messages, how to write a persuasive message. You know, if you think in terms of that letter you're planning to write to your manager, in which you are going to set out the reasons why you deserve a salary increase. Very, very important to write persuasively there. And there's some good money in knowing how to do that. The direct versus the indirect approach in writing, the issue of texting, using, in other words, WhatsApp and so on, and how important websites are in terms of writing, and how to write on a website, for example. Right. From Unit 5, we go on to look at Unit 8, where the unit covers correct grammar, obsolete grammar, how does one go about refusing claims and requests, what a really good complete sentence looks like, what concords are, the importance of being knowledgeable and correct in your use of tenses, the role of direct and reported speech, nouns and articles, prepositions, plural information, the apostrophe and tone. The apostrophe is, of course, another exciting and interesting challenge for most students. So many students use an apostrophe whenever they use the plural of a word, which is of course not correct. So are you sure that you know how, when and where to use an apostrophe? I see Leslie is typing. Luyanda, welcome. It's the first message that you're typing. I don't know what you're saying yes to, but I'm glad that you're agreeing with me. Welcome to the group and thank you for joining us. Yes, Leslie, some people just don't get their heads around the apostrophe. So it's something which is a huge challenge to some people. Right, so we've more or less looked at the units you need to be aware of. So let's go on and start looking at the assignment itself. The submission date. Tendai, hi and welcome to you too. Welcome Tendai, I'm glad you joined us. The assignment itself, we're going to now look at every question in the assignment. And if you only joined us now, if you are a bit late, don't worry about the work we've covered so far. It's recorded and it will be sitting on the module website for you. You can look at the recording, I would say, early next week. So let's look at the assignment and what the assignment is all about. The submission date, first of all, is 15 August. That's roughly 2 weeks away. And you will see that there are 4 questions in the assignment. So if you want to pace yourself, you can think of it in terms of 2 questions a week. And that's entirely doable. Of course, you may have other modules that you're registered for, so it's not really as simple as that, I know, but just to give you some sort of frame of reference to completing this. The submission time is 3 o'clock. Of course, it is the best possible option if you could submit the previous day. It's most definitely not a good strategy to work with an aim to submit just before 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I always go up to the entrance, to the front door, and watch the process of people coming in at the very last minute to submit. And it does unfortunately happen to some people that they are 5 minutes late. But the lady or the ladies who administer this don't care about excuses. They close the door. If you come and try and submit after 3 o'clock, it's minus, I think, 20 marks or something. So it's really worthwhile submitting the day before. You can submit at the Student Support Center, or you need to mail or courier the document to the IMM. Please remember that every assignment you hand in needs to have a list of references at the back. If you don't have a list of references, you are likely to lose a lot of marks. If I remember correctly, it's only the financial management assignments which do not require a list of references, but all the others do require that. Thank you, Jay. It's just confirming that all the assignments need that except for FM. Plan carefully. Think in terms of the amount of work you need to do before that 15th of August, and make sure that you have a plan on how to cope with doing all of that work. So do some planning around it. Let's now go on to actually checking the questions. The first question gives you a little scenario, and then it asks of you to explain and define a few words. Now, you have to look. I had a query from a student this morning about this question, and she said to me, how come that they tell us to define the word and there are 5 marks for it? So it's important that you give recognition to the fact that you not only have to define the word, but in most instances, you also have to give some sort of explanation which is attached to the word. So in the example, the first example, they ask you to explain what you understand with multinational. So how are you going to make up 5 marks for that? You have to define the word, I would say, multinational, and that would earn you 2 marks maybe. But then there are 3 marks outstanding. So you have to go a bit further than just defining the word. You have to explain what the word means also, and perhaps give an example of multinational. What can you think of in terms of an example of multinational? For this example, you could use, for example, a multinational company to give an example of, or what else? A multinational person. Is there such a thing? Yeah, it is possible to have more than 1 passport, for example. Somebody who lives in South Africa, but also lives in Zimbabwe, for example. That, could we explain perhaps the term multinational by using that as an example? So it's an interesting question. It will expose you to new words and broaden your understanding of the language. But be careful about answering the question, because there is a bit more to it than it would seem at first. So you need to do more than just give an explanation of the word. So as you can see, that question doesn't rely on a specific unit in the work that we've looked at so far earlier this session. It relies on your ability to, first of all, identify the word that you need to explain, and then researching a bit around it. Using the internet, using a encyclopedia perhaps, using a oi. Now I can't think of what do you call that big fat book that you look words up in? Can't think of it. Gone blank. Dictionary. Ah, thank you, Celeste. You saved my life. Dictionary. I couldn't think of the word. So it involves a bit of researching and then explaining it in your own words, giving an example. Luyanda, it's a sign of old age, I'm afraid, when there's a word that is so commonly used and well known and you simply can't think of it. But as long as you have friends like Celeste, they help you a bit and save your life. Thank you. So that's question 1. And we're looking here at 25 relatively easy marks. I hope that you look at this question and you think to yourself, oh man, I've got 25 marks in the bag. Those are mine. I can easily do this. Just make sure that you answer the questions fully. Explain the words fully. Question 2 is a bit more complicated. It requires a bit more planning. It requires of you to maybe make some rough notes first. But question 2 asks you to write a letter. And this is a specific type of letter. It's a formal or business letter. And you will know from looking at your textbook, looking at your learner guide, that formal or business letters require a specific format. They are different from just friendly letters to your friend or neighbor or parents. So make sure that you're aware of the format for a business letter. Then you need to look at the little scenario again, where they explain to you what the background or framing of this letter is. So you need to be aware of that. Please make a careful note of the fact that you need to present at least three paragraphs, and it needs to contain certain main ideas which you need to identify and plan your letter around. Make sure that you have an appropriate conclusion which you write down, and please make sure that it's something interesting and individual. You know, when I'm marking and I get to the 120th student who writes, hope to hear from you soon, looking forward to a positive response, and that's their concluding paragraph, and everybody's looks the same. Gee, that's a bit tired by then. So think to some extent of what are the other students going to write here. I'm going to be slightly different, not maybe off the wall and completely out of line, but I'm going to put my own stamp of individuality on this letter. So I'm going to do something different. And just looking at the comments the people in the group have made here on this in this dialog box or chat box, I can see that all of you are really interesting individuals. You're not one of the masses. So try and convey this individuality in the writing of this letter. It will just make it a little bit more interesting for the reader, the examiner, the marker, and once again, it may just earn you some extra marks. And the last point there refers to the need to end on a positive note. And let's see how you will do that. Right, now we come to a magnificently interesting question 3. A question, once again, which I always look forward to marking in the assignments, because very often students grab this opportunity to show their individuality. It's another opportunity for you to do something that stands out. And if I can just hop a bit on that point, something which stands out, something which is unique and different, often gets the attention of the marker. So see if you can inject some personality or some of your own personality, some of your individualism into this answer. They're asking you to use the statistics in the question to present a graphic communication device. Graphic communication device. What is that? What is a graphic communication device? I have a feeling that the Leslie is going to tell us what she thinks a graphic communication device is. Yeah, I thought so there. Oh, she's at the moment just laughing, but she's gonna tell us. Jay, how about you? Infographic, yes, infographic. It could be like a graph that is more than just a line graph. For example, Jay is typing as well, and he says a infographic device, communication device is like what? Helesti, if we can just stay with your answer a bit, am I correct in saying that an infographic, okay, it is a graph, it could be a graph, or could be described as a graph as well, Jay, so it's not that it's incorrect, but it's not a simple line graph, for example. You know, normally when we think of graphs, we think of an X and an A axis with a line on it in the body of the graph. But this is a bit more than that. Elisti, infographic, do you think I would be correct when I say that an infographic is a display of information in which some picture or some creativity is injected? Yeah. Jay, it does not have to be done by hand, no. Often students who are good with Excel do a computer-generated infographic there. So that's all. Oops, jumped forward. It's possible to do it by computer. Oh, Helesti is going to Photoshop something at the office. Oh, brilliant. I wish Helesti, that your answer ends up in my pack, or the pack that I have to mark, because I'm now so keen to see what you will come up with. But so yeah, I think you're getting my drift. But please be aware when you do this that you can't go completely wild. There are important requirements for this. So it's a question of being wild and creative within the confines of the essential requirement for a graphic communication device. Remember the need for labels. Where would labels be used? The axis or the axis at the bottom needs to be labeled. There needs to be a label for the axis that runs on the left hand side. That's the vertical axis. Most importantly, there needs to be a label at the top. So at the top of the page you will have question 3. Under that you would have a label. What are you going to call this infographic? That's very important, because you want the reader to see that label and to then know what this infographic is about. So often students forget to label the infographic as such. Please make sure that you give it a label. And don't overlook the second section of this question, 3.2, where they ask you to, on a new page, write a paragraph to summarize the information in the graph contained above. Now, once again, you wouldn't believe that some students write here something which is so obvious that you often wonder why they took the trouble to do it. They just repeat the statistics in this paragraph. For example, they would write, in Canada, 34% of the accidents were caused by drunken driving. In China, 4%. I mean, why do that? Why take the trouble to do that? You could just as well have copied and pasted that part of the question into your answer. So you need to tell us a story. Those stats, as they stand there, tell a story. And the examiner wants to see that you understand the story. You've grasped the story hidden in the stats. So spend some time again on doing that and doing it well, and you could earn a lot of easy marks again there. So that is that was question 3. The last question, question 4, is an interesting one. Again, one would look at that question and think, oh, that's easy, 20 marks. Who couldn't do that? That looks so easy. But again, students do this in a rushed moment, and they copy incorrectly from the question into their answer sheet. For example, the first sentence has the word bursaries in it, and it's gonna lose you marks if you misspell bursaries when you transfer that sentence into your answer sheet. So do make sure that you look at spelling. I'm not sure, I haven't read all these little statements here. There are 10 statements, but often there is intentionally a misspelled word inserted into it. So make sure that every word that you transfer into your answer sheet is spelled correctly. Make sure about sentence construction, about punctuation. The last point there is so valuable and important. Ask somebody else to check what you've done. Because you see what you've written so often that you don't notice the mistakes. But if you could just ask somebody else to have a look at it, they might be able to immediately pick up that you've made a little mistake somewhere. So just ask somebody else to check it for you before you submit it. And those are the 4 questions. Any questions you have about the questions? Let's see, Jay is typing away furiously. Hope he's not going to ask me a question I can't answer. That would be so embarrassing. But you know what? I have found that students understand and appreciate it when you say, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll find out for you and I'll let you know. Jay, it's a pleasure. It was such a huge positive to have you in the group. Felicity, I'm glad you're feeling a lot better, and you are Luyanda, thank you so much. It's such a nice thing to say. Let us just look at a few more slides. There are a few more just to close off and make sure that we are all aware of important issues. The first point there is true for this assignment, but it's true for every assignment. Often I mark answers and it's clear to me that the student didn't understand the question. And of course, if you answer a question which is not in the assignment, you might feel great about it, but oops, the examiner cannot give you any marks for it. So make sure that you understand the question completely before you start writing the answer. Start every new answer on a new page. That gives such a nice structure to your submission. Paragraphs are important. Remember to use paragraphs, leave a gap between paragraphs, please. The examiner is going to find it so much easier to mark if you have gaps between the paragraphs. Remember capital letters and punctuation, those are important. Remember citations or in-text references and the reference list at the end. Also remember, I didn't list it here, but remember that there is a requirement in terms of the font that you need to use. You need to use a specific font. The font size is specified, and the spacing is specified. So make sure that those settings are correct when you work on your assignment answers. There are a few more important things to keep in mind. Does this thing that you hand in look neat? That's quite important. Did you use headings and subheadings, and are those headings and subheadings numbered? Is there an index page? Are all your answers clearly numbered? Are the pages numbered? Is the assignment cover sheet completed fully? You will know that you need to put in a first page which you design yourself, a cover sheet. We call it sometimes, with your name, with the module name and code on it, and perhaps the date or something like that. So remember to include that cover sheet in your submission. What are the things that you need to avoid? Avoid leaving this to the last minute. As I suggested earlier, make sure that you start as soon as possible. Please work with the Harvard referencing style document right from the word go. That Harvard referencing style document you will find on eLearn under student support. So make sure that you have that document and that you use Harvard referencing throughout. Please avoid sharing your completed work with a friend, because it often happens that somebody that you thought of as a friend ends up copying your answers and handing that in. And of course, all the assignments go through Turnitin. So Turnitin picks it up right away if your answer is exactly the same as that of somebody else. Avoid using the incorrect style of referencing. Leslie, yes, that document does give examples of or samples of the citation style that you need to use. It is in the document, and you will see that it seems intimidating at first, but very soon, if you just make sure that you get the basics right, very soon you do it like it's nothing. Jay, yes, there will be another session just before the exam, a session just like this one. Right, very last slide. Thank you to all of those of you who kept going, still part of the group. That's amazing. Remember that you can mail your questions to that email address. You can also use the module chat forum to post questions. If you feel challenged by something, you don't know what to do, you're unsure of something, post that question on the chat forum. You will also, even if you are shy and you don't want to put something up on that forum, you will see that other students put comments there, and some of these may be helpful to you. It may solve your problem for you as well. And just to repeat, the very last point there is a repeat of something I said right in the beginning. Do not postpone trying to have a problem solved. Ask as soon as you can. Use the module chat forum or send an email to that address or phone in. Just phone in. Dial the number. Say to the switchboard, I want to talk to that crazy bloke who did the webinar with us on business communication. Put me through to him. I have a question for him. and it will be lovely to chat to you and to try and help you. And as I said earlier, even if I can't help you, at least I can say to you, Jay, I don't know the answer to that question, but I can find out for you and I will let you know. So that's all, folks. That's my whole story. And I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it to have you here, part of the group, and chatting and commenting and just making sure that I know that you're out there. It was really brilliant. Maybe if at some stage you come into the IMM here in Mill Park and you have some time, ask them at reception to call me so that I meet you. It would be so nice. If you come in on the 15th to hand in your assignment, I will most probably be somewhere around the room there, and if you could just come up to me and say, "Hi, my name's Jay, I was on the business communication webinar," it would be awesome. It will be great, because I would certainly like to meet you. You all seem like really great people, and it's always, I find, as I get older, I can confirm that it's always great to meet great people. And so it'll be nice to meet you if you're around. Right. So all that remains for me now, as they say in the movies, is to say good night and thank you. And I hope that you all are at home already and that you don't have to travel home from this session. But that if you do have to travel, do so safely. Have a good night, and hope tomorrow is the start of a truly amazing weekend for you. And Celeste, thank you for your thank you, and have a great semester. I hope you do well in all your assignments, and I hope you enjoy it as well. Good night, good luck, and goodbye.